payroll on Friday.
Company after company is slashing its workforce. Peloton and GE, the latest to announce layoffs. The Peloton CEO saying the following: I know many of you will feel angry, frustrated, emotionally drained by today's news, but please know this is a necessary step if we are going to save Peloton, and we are. Taylor Riggs has more. Hey, Taylor.
I want to get to Peloton, but I first want to focus on GE, John, as the industrial bellwether for this economy. GE, of course, also announcing about 500 layoffs in their wind turbine unit as well. That represents within the factory unit about 20% of the U.S. onshore wind workforce. So it's isolated at least to this unit. But again, it's sort of a similar story when we think about the industrial and the read on the economy. Mike McKee's going to do this next slide a lot better than I am. But this is at least one that shows Federal Reserve is sometimes too optimistic when they predict unemployment rates. So they're rising, and they always end up coming in a little bit higher than they had initially projected. Of course, this year, 2022, TBD remains to be seen. Finally, I'll just end here, John, as you mentioned about Peloton. So away from maybe some of the industrial outlook and the economics, but more on sort of the cyclicality of where we are in this cycle. As you mentioned, also 500 jobs trying to save the company in a 6-month turnaround plan.
Taylor Riggs, what a tough job in this economy as things start to roll over a little bit. Mike McKee, you were teed up nicely by Taylor Riggs. Let's talk about tomorrow's number. What are you looking for?
I actually want to talk about Peloton. I haven't finished paying for mine yet, so save the company. Actually, take a look at what happened today with jobless claims. The market loved it because it's a bad news, good news situation with claims rising a little bit, but the number of job openings is still extremely high, so the Fed sees that as okay at this point, and they'll be looking for a small decline in the overall hiring rate. They want to see things go down on a sort of regular basis, but not collapse. 260,000 is the forecast. They'd be fine with that. Unemployment not expected to change. Average hourly earnings down a little bit. So all in all, the market is expecting a kind of Goldilocks report. We'll see if we get that. But again, it's the trend that matters to the Fed. And if they do see the number of people who are getting new jobs declining in the same way that they are, we have seen over the past couple of months, then that's going to be a relatively good news sign for them. It doesn't mean they're going to change their views on what they're going to do for November, but it does mean that they'll feel like they're on the right track.
Mike McKee, the Fed speak. Can we finish there? I wonder if it's driving you nuts yet. Evans, Cook, Kashkari, Waller, Mester, all today. Even after the Fed speak we've already had. Is there anything left to be said?
There's nothing left to be said, but the question is, do the markets get it? They're still hanging on to this Fed pivot idea, and as long as they are, the Fed's going to keep pounding away and say, we're not going to do that. You know, if you like jobless claims today, you're going to love jobless claims next week. Half of Florida's out of work.
True.
So we're going to have a monster rally on that basis.
It's uncomfortable, isn't it, this bad news, good news thing? It's a dynamic I really don't like, Mike.
Yeah. Well, the Fed looks past it in the sense that this goes up and down every day, depending on the latest data point. Mary Daly made that point yesterday. The Fed is data dependent, and data is a plural word.
Mike McKee, thank you. Equities up by about 0.1% on the S&P, on the Nasdaq up 0.5%. Your trading diary, the event you need to be watching, up next.
What is the main reason institutional investors give you for not adopting crypto?
There's still a lot of regulatory uncertainty. The U.S. has been not good at making things clear. What's a security, what's not a security.
Nutrigenomics and precision nutrition is one of those rare scientific fields that overlaps with the Instagram-friendly wellness industry.
There is a lot of interest in this idea of personalized nutrition, and especially how accessible it is to the public. You can go on Google and type personalized nutrition or diet and genes, and you will find dozens of different companies that offer this nutrition precision tests.
One of those companies is Routine. Routine claims that their personalized tests stemming from sciences like nutrigenomics make their supplements different. But even with the claims from Routine, as well as dozens of other personalized nutrition companies, the science still has a long way to go.
This is a market that over the past few weeks has made it clear it wants to go higher. It got a little spooked by the idea that geopolitical tensions are rising.
25 minutes into this, just about holding on to gains on the S&P 500, up around about 0.1%. If you break it down sector to sector, energy names up again. 4 days of this now. Energy names on the S&P 500 over that period, up around about 14%. What a rip off the back of what's happening in the commodity market. That's the price action. Here's your trading diary, kicking things off with President Biden speaking at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Fed speak continues throughout the day. We get Evans, Cook, Kashkari, Waller, Mester and a whole lot more. Williams and Bostic going through to the end of the week on Friday. Then the main event on Friday, it's Payrolls Friday, your payrolls report. It's just a few days away. In fact, it's less than 24 hours away. From New York City, thank you for choosing Bloomberg TV. This was the countdown to the open. This is Bloomberg.
The tag on the product may read Made in the USA, but the sign on the CEO's door often says Made in India. Alphabet's Sundar Pichai, Microsoft's Satya Nadella, IBM's Arvind Krishna, Micron Technology's Sanjay Mehrotra, and that's just the start. Add in the chief executives of Adobe, Deloitte, Gap, VMware, and that doesn't count Indians running companies all over the world. Why have so many Indians risen to the top? Vinod Khosla points to India's incredibly competitive education system. If you can survive the pressure it takes to get into one of the Indian institutes of technology, it gives you confidence to handle American universities and later the business world. Meanwhile, the belief in India's ability to produce so many tech wizards is reinforced every year. Indians make up about 3/4 of the immigrants receiving coveted H-1B visas for the U.S., and it's a safe bet that some of them will eventually find their way to the C-suite.
I'm Kaylee Lines.
And I'm Damian Sassower. Join us each week on our brand new show, The Lineup. If you're betting on the Mets, it's a pretty good return.
We'll cover the latest trends in sports betting, the hottest matchups, shifting spreads, and the data you can't find anywhere else. It is crazy how much the money line has changed from the preseason to now.
Plus, expert insights from special guests.
The Eagles got a gem on their hands. I hate to say it because they're in the NFC East with the Giants.
Odds are it'll be your favorite way to stay in the game.
Catch The Lineup Fridays and Saturdays only on Bloomberg.
What is the main reason institutional investors give you for not adopting crypto?
There's still a lot of regulatory uncertainty. The U.S. has been not good at making things clear. What's a security, what's not a security.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak with Lee.
On Bloomberg Radio.
Welcome to Daybreak Australia.
This is Bloomberg Technology.
Welcome to Bloomberg, The Lineup.
Pepsi's Number Fever campaign in the Philippines has probably gone down in history as one of the biggest marketing disasters in history, mainly because of a human error that led Pepsi to print more winning caps than they planned. The resulting chaos caused riots, civil unrest, and even deaths. Reporting this story took over a year, and it resulted in me flying to Manila in the Philippines to meet unlucky winners and to find out exactly what happened back then in the 1990s. My name is Jeff Maish. I'm a journalist based in Los Angeles. I wrote the story for Bloomberg Businessweek about Pepsi's Number Fever campaign. The Philippines is a really interesting country. It's made up of thousands of islands, and it's also a country that's very heavily influenced by America. American culture is everywhere you look in the Philippines. They're obsessed with Frank Sinatra music, for example. They love all things America, and that extends to their love for soft drinks, Pepsi-Cola, Coca-Cola. In the 1990s, it was everywhere. Pepsi and Coca-Cola were embroiled in what is now known as the Cola Wars. It was a fierce battle for market dominance. Number Fever was already a really popular promotion. It had been rolled out in America to great success. And so Pepsi decided to roll it out internationally, particularly in Asia. They thought it was the answer to their problems. They thought it could finally help them beat their biggest competitor.
898, I won! Look for the winning number in Sari stores every day, also on TV, radio, and newspapers. You could be a millionaire.
$1 million pesos, or $68,000, doesn't sound like a lot now, but in 1992, that was a phenomenal amount of money. You've got to remember that in the Philippines at the time, the average monthly income was about $100, so $1 million pesos was wealth beyond anyone's wildest imaginations. Number Fever caught fire in the Philippines. Kids were saving up their pocket money to buy a bottle of Pepsi. Parents were squirreling away all of the bottle caps in bags. You would walk down the street and people were going through trash trying to find discarded bottle caps. It was a national phenomenon. Pepsi boasted that half the population of the Philippines was playing it. Number Fever boosted Pepsi's sales every month from $10 million to $14 million. It had a huge impact on Pepsi's bottom line. Number Fever quickly became number hysteria. Maids were being jailed for stealing their employers' winning bottle caps. There was even some murders over winning bottle caps. People were fighting in the streets over these caps. There were signs that there were going to be problems with Number Fever very early. Pepsi had rolled out the competition in Chile, and a garbled fax had caused some kind of problem with the winning number. They'd announced the wrong one in Chile, causing riots. There were signs that there could be big problems ahead if they didn't keep their eye on the ball. So in 1992, Pepsi decided to extend the campaign in the Philippines, and they announced that the competition would go on for a few more weeks. One night, on the television news, they announced the latest winning number, 349. The problem was, 349 had already been allocated as a non-winning number in earlier campaigns. So there were literally hundreds of thousands of bottle caps with 349 just floating around the Philippines. Hundreds of thousands of people all across the Philippines, thousands of islands, were finding winning bottle caps. 349, 349. Some people had 10 lucky 349 bottle caps. People were dancing in the street, celebrating. They thought their problems were over. They were millionaires. It's still not certain exactly how many winners there were of lucky 349 bottle caps, but we know that Pepsi printed over 600,000 of them. Pepsi realized very early that there was a problem. Hundreds of people started arriving at their bottling plants with their lucky bottle caps. They realized something was seriously wrong. Pepsi tried to solve the problem by offering a small token donation to anyone that brought a lucky bottle cap to their bottling plant. But it wasn't enough. People didn't want just a handful of pesos. People wanted their million peso prize. Within a year, violent protests and riots outside Pepsi factories would leave dozens injured and 5 people dead. At one Pepsi factory in the Philippines, a grenade was thrown through the window. It killed 3 Pepsi employees. Analisys Rosario was a school teacher living near Manila in the Philippines. She was one of the tragic victims of this whole thing. She was walking to a nearby store to buy some rice one day when a Molotov cocktail was thrown at a Pepsi truck in a violent protest. It bounced under the truck and exploded. It killed her and an innocent bystander who was just a child and injured many others. When I was in the Philippines, I tracked down Analisys's daughter, Cindy, and her husband, Raul. It was clear to me that they were still very upset by the whole thing. You know, a family had been ripped apart by this competition. And Raul told me that he'd never remarried. He'd told me that he'd gone to meet Pepsi executives after his wife was killed. And he was angry. He said to them, you know, this wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for you, if it wasn't for number fever. The biggest revelation from my reporting was rumors that Pepsi was somehow involved in bombing their own trucks. I found a newspaper report with a headline that said, "Pepsi goons bomb their own trucks." And when I visited the NBI, the police department in the Philippines, they presented me with documents and interviews with people who claimed that Pepsi
sebebasnya bayar pakai apa aja di Tokopedia.
Bebas ongkir dong.
Tokopedia.
Beli mobil di OLX Autos juga gratis biaya perawatan. Pokoknya untung deh lo.
OLX Autos.
And more recently, my co-author and I have shown that a lot of that is concentrated in the more hidden tier 3 cities, you know, the Cincinnatis of China, so to speak. But they add up, like you say, the Cincinnatis of China could be 5 and 10 million people, and like maybe Cincinnati's a few 100,000. And on top of that, there are a lot of them, they account for 60% of GDP. You don't see it, that people travel to the big cities, they're less visible, but they really have a problem where they've been building like crazy and are sort of getting to the end of the line of that development strategy, and it's not that easy for them to pivot.
And so what then happens when we do see China coming out of zero COVID at the same time that the rest of the globe is slowing down or even entering recession? I mean, do we see sort of a circular effect here where China's troubles maybe exacerbate the troubles of the rest of the globe?
Oh, China's been enormously important for the rest of the globe. It counted for, I don't know, like a quarter of all global growth over the decade before the pandemic, maybe going into the first year, at least according to the IMF. And those days are over. I think we're looking at much slower growth in China. Who knows what the real numbers are, but much slower growth in China for years to come. And of course it matters. I mean, it hits commodity exporters the hardest, that they have a voracious appetite for commodities.